Thank you for attending this session this morning, why employers should consider high school students for their internship programs. Today's panelists all work with schools and high school interns in different roles. Our goal today is to see how all that comes together and it becomes a successful experience for high school students from the perspective of building a very strong talent pipeline. I'll introduce myself and then we'll have the panelists introduce themselves. My name is Joe Speech. I'm the superintendent of schools in the Wycliffe School District. What we do, and I'll be very brief, we have a series of workforce development, career development programmings that include a paid internship program, thanks to our friends at Magnet, and one of the leaders of that program, Terrence Robinson, stands in the back. And thanks to my partner, the Director of Strategic Innovation in the Wycliffe Schools, we've built that program over the last couple of years actually now, and have had great success. And we would advocate for internship programs for students because it works for us, and it has worked for us over the past couple of years. But our panelists beginning at the far end, Marzel.
I was hoping you start the other way. Well, I'll take up all the time with that one. So Marzel Brown, I'm over at Rockwell Automation. Part of the intern piece for me is that I started an internship program, a high school internship program, I have to be specific, because we historically took college students forever. And so we started a high school internship program at Rockwell, predominantly focusing on women and diverse candidates. We still struggle there with engineering. And our focus was around engineering and getting them exposure to the different fields. So that's where I'm at. I've been at Rockwell for 19 years now in a software role. In the last 3 years, I've been straddling the HR and engineering fence. So that's where I'm at.
My name is Karen McAdams. I've been with Parker Hannafin for 20 years. I'm a site human resources manager in a location in Elyria. We traditionally have had just college-age summer interns, but last fall we partnered with the EC program. So I had my first 2 high school students that are doing very well, and in the fall we'll take an additional 2 high school students. So it's very new for the high school students, but so far so good.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Serene Bailey. I work for Jumpstart. I'm the Emerging Talent Network Program Leader. This is a new initiative at Jumpstart that's part of the KeyBank Business Boost and Build program. And we are charged with working with 8 Cleveland metropolitan schools focusing on 11th and 12th graders. This summer, we're going to offer 40 paid internships over a wide range of different industries. And the funding will provide amazing amounts of things, including clothing, salary, transportation. One thing that's unique about our particular program is we're focusing on 11th and 12th graders that are going out into the workforce right after graduation. They're not considering secondary education at that point in time.
Good morning. Craig Dorn with Youth Opportunities Unlimited. Youth Opportunities Unlimited, or YOU, is a youth workforce organization, so much of what we do touches the internship space. Particularly, though, we have our signature internship program called ProPath, and the ProPath team is here. Raise your hand, and they do a great job. And this is an internship program where we act as a third-party intermediary, identify young people throughout Cuyahoga County, match them with a career opportunity at a location where they have 120 to 180 hour experience. They both add a lot of value to the employer, but they learn about a career pathway for themselves. We also are a partner, to call out to, we've heard a couple call outs already to ECEC. We're a partner with many organizations in the community, and one of them is Magnet through the ECEC program.
Each panelist has talked a little bit about how they work with high school interns. Let's begin down at this end of the table with Serene. And Serene, talk a little bit about the common misconception that employers have about hiring high school interns, if you would.
Well, I think a lot of times when I go out in the community and I talk to business owners, they immediately think college intern. And they have all kinds of programs and projects and ideas for college interns. And so a lot of times it is a challenge to talk about high school interns. So one of the first things I have business owners think about first is this could be a professional development opportunity for your college interns to manage high school interns. But then I want people to think about and really think about what are the levels and depths of projects that a high school intern can do. We can be amazed at the quality and types of projects that a high school intern can do. High school interns can produce valuable work that can further an employer's organizational goals. These opportunities not only provide high school interns with valuable work experience, but it also helps develop our future workforce. When companies develop internship programs with high schools, they can create long-term sustainable partnerships that link education of our youth with a potential pipeline of employees. High school interns bring in energy, a new thought process, diversity to an organization. They can shake it up. And so sometimes you really have to think about and be open to that opportunity. They can really help your brand awareness much earlier to a younger constituency as well as a business owner. So those are some things that I try to do when I'm talking to business owners.
Thank you. Craig, how about you?
So when you think about the big misconception, the number one misconception is that high school students, how capable they are. They have a lot that they can offer of value, they're hardworking, and I'm going to tell just a story to underscore this point. So we had a couple interns who worked at an engineering company, and they were put in that position because they were interested in that career, and they were given an opportunity to study some blueprints on a big project and just give some feedback. And they were very scared because after they did all their work, they thought, wow, we must have really blown this and done this wrong because we got completely different numbers. Turns out they were right, the engineers were wrong, and they saved the company $1 million. So that's a very stark example of how the capability of high school interns is a misconception. They can add a lot of value to your organization.
Craig, any finder's fee for youth opportunity?
We need to ask them for a donation, so thank you very much.
And we'll go to the far end, and we'll start with Karen, because I know Marzel would prefer it that way.
That's right.
Karen, if you would, provide an overview of the internship programs as they relate to high school students, and provide some information about how your organization has benefited from working with high school students.
So initially when we partnered with the ECEC, the idea was that these particular students may just go right into work right after high school. They're not necessarily going to go to college because they really don't know what they want to do at this point. So with that idea in mind, what we set up for ours were, it's a rotation, roughly, I would say, every 6 months. So the first half of the school year, second half of the school year, and summer. So we do have them 2 days a week in the afternoon, and then we'll have them for 8 to 10 weeks in the summer. So we decided to put them through the manufacturing, so you learn start to finish. So you start with logistics, you move to assembly and test, quality, every discipline that we have in the manufacturing floor. I do have 2 students, and one very clearly looks like, we'll call it an apprenticeship. That's going to be great for him. I do see him going down that path in the future. I don't know that he will go to college once he graduates, which is fine. My other student is definitely college material. She doesn't necessarily know that and recognize that yet, but we spend time with her, and we're going to pull her from the traditional, I'll call it traditional, this is my first time with high school students. So we're going to pull her from the rotation, and we're going to put her in engineering for the summer. They did do a class last year in SolidWorks, so we'll put her in engineering. And then we'll rotate her through supply chain, through finance, and then spend some time with me. So just because we started one way, very quickly we determined they're on 2 different paths. And it's a small facility. We have about 130 people, so I can make that change on the fly, and not really. And the program is very supportive. Hey, if that's what you see, please coach her. Young minority student, let's put her on the right path and give her some guidance that she doesn't necessarily have at home, but we can provide to her. And I will tell you, when they first approached me about taking high school students, I said, I've been with Parker 20 years. Absolutely not. We don't hire anyone under 18. Huge misconception. So I vetted that out through legal, through risk management, through everyone in my corporate office, and they all said, you're crazy. Who told you that was the rule? So I've understood that for 20 years, for 19 and a half years, and we completely blew that out of the water, which has completely opened the idea of high school interns throughout Parker. So our aerospace group on the West Coast, they're partnering with the high school now as well for the fall. So it was a huge misconception, but just something we all thought, everyone I've worked with for 20 years. So we're pretty excited about that.
Thank you. Marzel, before you move forward, I'm going to clarify ECEC for the members of the audience who don't know what that is. ECEC stands for Early College, Early Career. And it's a program developed by Magnet in partnership with local school districts, Wycliffe being one of those, Cleveland Metropolitan Schools and Lorraine Schools, in which students go to work. They receive an industry-ready credential when they're done. They earn college credit through, I think in all cases, Tri-C and Lorraine Community College. And they obviously earn their high school diploma as they go, and it's a paid internship. So it's really unique to Northeast Ohio. So that's kind of is the brief overview of early college, early career, and it has served students incredibly well. I could speak for our kids. Our cohorts grow every year. So with that.
So to take the internship development approach from an engineer standpoint versus an HR standpoint, I didn't think about an 18-year-old or under 18-year-old age part of it. My goal was to give back to those folks who are not necessarily getting the opportunity to see engineering careers in areas like that. And so we were just sitting in the hallway laughing about this, where I got the green light in March to start in May to do our program 10 years ago. And so basically I leveraged my partnerships with the Cleveland Public Schools and the guidance counselors and the CDO. And so our program was developed in a different approach because of all of the misconceptions, because of this is going to be new. Folks are not comfortable with things that don't look like them, right? And so the way ours was built is the first year of the program is, it's in the summer, it's an 8-week paid internship program. So it is building what I call mini Yodas, not look like Yoda, but brain power like Yoda. And so they incorporate everything we did as a company in that first summer, and that's building hands-on all our software, all our marketing, all our sales, the entire profile of what we do at Rockwell. And part of that was strategically done because now I have people from those areas helping these students work with them, and now they're creating the buzz as well. And so so that was the first year of it, and then they come back year over year. So when you go to your senior leaders and say, hey, in 6 years I may have something for you, but you got to invest today, right? That's a long reach for them. And because we helped open MC Squared STEM, that's a year-round school, and so I'm taking 10th graders, so now it's a 7-year reach. I don't think they realized I was taking 10th graders, but we were. And I let HR figure out all of the details around all the safety and things that we had to watch out for from that standpoint. But so the first year was a lot of hands-on with us, with myself. And then the years after that, they would go and work throughout different groups, and they would rotate throughout the company. And so at its peak, I had my high school interns and early college folks in our Milwaukee office, our Cleveland office, our Phoenix office, our sales offices in Chicago and Pittsburgh and Columbus. And so the program grew pretty fast. And so we did a lot of good work. We worked with you guys at YOU for a couple years as well. And so that's the way the program is worked. It is a paid opportunity, and some of our interns who are graduating have been with us for 6 and 7 years. And what's nice about it is if they go to school in Northeast Ohio, then they can work part-time during the school year as well. So I have students that are at Cleveland State and are at Case that work during the summer full-time, and then they work part-time while they're in college as well, in which we give them credit from a company standpoint too. So all the time that they're in our building, they're accruing time. And that's kind of one of those tokens that they can get as well. So that's the structure of how it was. And I agree, the misconceptions of are they capable, can they do, we put those to rest really, really quick. And just to your point, 2 of my seniors years ago put together a kind of a prepackaged demo of some products we want to release, and they sent it out to customers. And our pre-sales were millions plus on that as well. And I don't think they realized these were 2 seniors in high school working on that, but they can do, and that's the structure of the program. And the benefit definitely has been not hiring as many as I wanted them to hire, but when we were in the hallway talking, and I started quoting companies, including Parker, with Cisco and Google and Microsoft, my interns have been prepared. And I think the biggest one for me was I was at the GCP puts on a high school career fair, and that was just a couple weeks ago. and a guy walked up to me. He's an assistant principal at John Marshall, I think. He was one of my interns at Rockwell, and he talked about the value of his experience, although he didn't end up in engineering, but just the value of being in that space. And so those are ones that really go, yeah, that's a good thing. So the engineering ones are great, but just producing people that are ready for the workforce and giving them the opportunity. And just real quick, in the 11th grade in high school, I worked at NASA for the summer, and that's kind of where I picked up this, where they had a really great program that they ran, and so I wanted to mimic something like it, and so it's running really well. I don't run it anymore because I did it as in my free time. I already had a full-time job at Rockwell, and so I just kind of got burned out, so they hired somebody full-time to do it, and so it's still running. So that's my part of it.
Thank you, Marzell. While you're rolling, we're going to stay with you.
What's the problem?
Talk about how you might onboard and prepare, supervise high school interns differently than your college interns.
It's interesting. So the onboarding experience, we took it a different way, a different approach when I did it. So traditionally, when you hire a new employee, right, they come and they sit for half a day with all the HR spiel and all that stuff about the company. I immediately knew that was not going to work for 11th graders. And so our onboarding experience, our orientation was at Beechwood Mall, and it was a scavenger hunt. And so what that quickly allowed them to do is build a team, right? Because there are all these high school 11th and 12th graders who are used to being that person, right? Because there are all these smart kids, so they're used to being the person. And so we partner them together in a scavenger hunt so they don't know each other when they walk in. But I quickly can assess who's my folks who are going to think outside the box, who's creative, how they can get things done. And the goal of that, until we got in trouble, again, that's that engineer versus HR. You can't do scavenger hunts in malls. But we didn't know that. And so they can't buy anything. And so there's a lot of interesting things on there, like, you know, getting a map of the mall, or getting an emergency exit plan, or getting a coat hanger, somebody, or, you know, all kinds of weird stuff. But they quickly built teams, right? Because I knew I only had 8 weeks with these young folks. That was one part of it. And then there's all of the soft skills, and we really made that fun around the do's and don'ts in the workplace. And so Rockwell is a pretty laid back from a dress standpoint, and I always would tell them that engineer who comes in shorts and those gloves on his feet, he earned that. You can't do that on day one, right? We're going to come in this way, and that's a shift, right? And then just the way you talk, the way you send emails. We're not texting. There is a way to email folks, and also to remind them that they are looked at differently in the building because of that age gap. And so we did some role-based playing, we did some Myers-Briggs with them, and we did this thing called Lost at Sea, which people get mad because everybody wants shark repellent. I mean, the Navy puts it on, and they give out a bunch of, here are the things that you lost at sea, and you need some stuff to survive. What do you need? And just to watch teams build, and so we continue to build teams. Again, I stress they're from all over different high schools, and again, our structure was 3-point whatever, interested in science and math, which drives all of these people who are smart in their own regards. So we need to build those teams and help them do that. And then there's all the lightweight, what we call performance reviews. So we do performance reviews at work. I don't want to show them too much of that. I don't want to scare them away from work, but we do set out goals with a technical and a soft skill goal with them, so they can make sure they're growing, and we'll monitor those. When they come back year over year, that's with the managers. So I still would work with their managers to make sure that they're being challenged and they're not just sitting and making copies, although people don't do that anymore. But you know, that kind of term. And so we grew them that way, and that's kind of how we onboarded them. And that is a little different than what we do with interns and new hires. So. Thank you. Yep.
Karen, onboarding experience with high school students.
Well, being the HR manager, of course, mine is much more HR-y, if that's a real word. So they did because they spend 4 hours 2 days a week with us, we did the traditional, here's your paperwork, but these are students and that they have never filled out a tax form. They didn't know what to do. So we were with them, calling their parents. I can't advise them. So we talk through it, and then we get their parents on the phone, and we had to fill out forms. One of them doesn't have a driver's license. He just had his school ID. Because we're in aerospace and there are very strict rules, and my compliance officer at the group level is like, he has to have an ID. So we had to talk to him, make sure he talked to his parents. Like, we need you to go and get an ID. So that was a little bit different. So we go through that process, and they're assigned. They have a specific team leader, but for at least one of my students, she fell in love with the team fell in love with her, and they bonded immediately. So they've taken her under their wing, and they spend a lot more time with her than I necessarily need to, which is nice when our team is used to having interns and co-ops. So we haven't done any formal, fun stuff like that. But for the summer, I will have 5 corporate summer interns. So we will do separate training pieces for them. So it's really just normal, kind of, if there are any issues or concerns. And we just make sure there's a touch point with them every week. And they also, through the ECEC, have someone who touches base with them every week as well. So it was traditional. And these are paid. They're considered part-time Parker team members, which, based on our policies and procedures, they actually have a 401k. They don't know it, because they wouldn't know what to do with it at this point, I don't think, either one of these students. So in the summer, once they're full-time, we'll sit down with them and go through that. Here's what that means. So that's kind of crazy, maybe, to think at 16, they have 401ks, but they do, so that's kind of cool.
So Karen, I'm going to suggest they take their 401k and donate it to their local school superintendent.
But
Just one idea.
But you're not their local school superintendent, so
That's
you wouldn't
okay. We have
gain.
some of those guys too. So.
Okay.
We're going to shift and put a little pressure on the schools a little bit. And Serene, if you would start, please. How are high schools preparing their students for internships? What do they need to do that they're not already doing? What do they do well? What is all happening in the school buildings right now?
Well, I'm going to start with what they're doing very, very well. I work with the Emerging Talent Network program, and I have 8 schools that I'm targeting right now. 5 of them are the Academies of Cleveland, and 3 are portfolio schools. And I wanted to highlight the Academies of Cleveland particularly for this question, because these are 21st century schools that provide the same rigorous academic content that you look for: math, science, reading, social studies, but they're doing it through a very different lens, in a personalized way, where students are going after specific industries. So some of the career paths that are being focused on in the academies include things like animal science, automotive technology, construction, culinary arts, healthcare, just to name a few. And to give you an example, if you go into the schools, you're going to see some classrooms that mimic real-world work environments. So I would suggest all of you go to Jane Addams, the Executive Grill. They have a fully functioning restaurant there. The students are cooking the meals. They're actually providing exemplary customer service, and they're taking your cash payment. Or if you go to Max Hayes High School, you're going to walk into a classroom that looks like an automotive repair shop, and they're actually working on cars. So the students are getting a lot of those hands-on learning skills in the classroom environment. What they need to have is to have it in the real world. If you look at some of the organizations that are partnering with these schools, and I'll say YOU, Jumpstart, Magnet, GCP, Business Volunteers Unlimited, they're actually looking at ways to partner with companies to provide these opportunities for our scholars. I think what's important when we talk about internships and being internship ready, it's not just the internship experience. There are lots of ways that companies can be involved with schools. You can do mock interviewing. You can help with resume writing. You can give interview tips. You can job shadow. You can provide a day with Marzell and track around with him and his organization. So there are lots of ways that students can become internship ready. In the areas where we can always use improvement, it's soft skills. You can never get enough soft skills, can you? So we do a lot of interviewing, we do a lot of resume writing and things of that nature, but there's some of these intangibles that our young people are learning in the classroom, but internships allow them to practice it in real world. Being on time, being work appropriate ready, whatever that looks like in your industry. how to be polite, how to handle constructive criticism. Those are things that students are learning, but they need more of. So those are some of my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Craig, if you would.
Sure, I'm going to piggyback on something Serene said and something Marzell said. First, Serene talked about the soft skills, and to emphasize that, another partnership we have very strong is with Jumpstart. And so right now for the Jumpstart internship, we're providing soft skills. And when that's relevant to your question about schools, is schools have a lot on their plate, and they're doing a good job, and they're educating the young people, trying to get them to graduate, pass all kinds of state tests, state requirements that change every 2 years. And so the advantage of third-party intermediaries like YOU can really help with the soft skills training component. We have a curriculum that we've been honing for over 30 years and really know this area well. And so that's one area for the schools. I also wanted to call out our partnership with Jumpstart. But the other, Marzell made a really good point when he told the story of the young man who's now a John Marshall principal. Internships are, no matter what, going to be a great career exploration opportunity. And so anything that can be done to intentionally make sure there's reflection throughout the internship experience on, is this the way I want to go, or it's not the way I want to go, but I had a great experience at Rockwell. Either way, it's a success. But we have to be intentional about taking an opportunity, whether it's have them write a paper, write a blog, which sounds a little bit more fun. There's different strategies to make sure they're reflecting on this career opportunity, to reflect on what they're going to do and what they might do, even if it's, I don't want to do that, whatever the internship was, if they decide not to go on that path.
Thank you, Craig. Karen, let's go back and talk a little bit about the projects, the types of projects that your student interns are doing. Also, talk a little bit about their typical schedule, when they work, those kinds of things.
So right now their schedule is they come on Tuesdays and Wednesday afternoons. The ECEC program provides transportation, so we don't have to worry about them not showing up, or we don't have to worry about going to get them. So they're dropped off, they're picked up both days. I wouldn't call them projects that they're working on, so they're learning a function. So they learned logistics, so they learned receiving, pulling jobs to be taken out to the manufacturing floor to be assembled, shipping. So they did that rotation successfully, and now they've moved to quality. So what is the quality department about? What do they do? Non-conforming material, what do you do with it? How do you write it up? What kind of detail is needed? You know, you realize you can only write with blue pen when you're out on the production floor, so they can tell it's an original. Those little details, that's what they're learning now. And again, so one of my students will go to engineering, so she will work on projects then. So we're working on a new project for a Cessna aircraft, and so that he will go to assembly and learn that process, start to finish. You have all these components. At the end, you better have a fuel pump that works, because a fuel pump for an airplane, you can't pull it over to the side of the road, right? So it has to be right, and then testing and what you have to document. So that's what he will learn.
Thank you. And Marzell, the kinds of projects work that your interns do, their work year and schedule.
Right.
And so forth.
So kind of is multidimensional. So when we talked about the first year piece of the program, those are all hands-on projects that they build from scratch and have to demo. And so those vary from, and when we talk about the full picture, and I'll try to not get too far into details, but those vary. So Rockwell Automation is a industrial automation company that most people either haven't heard of or know little about, and you can't go buy our stuff from anywhere. And so it's a struggle on recognizing brand and what we can bring to the table as far as a company. And whether people in the room know this is not a Rockwell plug, but we touch pretty much everything you do in life every day, and you don't realize we do it, right? So we're kind of like the stars of the show behind the scene, right? And so with our interns, some of the projects they work on, when I say a traffic intersection, right? So I would take them in their first year, so they're learning. So we go out to the Department of Transportation, and we ask them, if you had a blank check, what would a over-the-top automated system look like for your traffic intersection? Then we'd come back and we'd build that using software, hardware, our sales team, because now we got to sell it to the Department of Transportation. We have to do all kinds of stuff behind it. So projects like that are what they do in the first year. And the one I highlight real quick is that, so my first year is the last project we did, probably why I'm not doing the program anymore. We built a full functioning demo for the Children's Museum that was in the Children's Museum for 4 years that ran every day. Now they were only there 8 weeks, so they knew nothing about Rockwell, and 8 weeks later they built this exhibit that sat in the museum and about 70,000 uses a month that they did. And so that's a great story for them to see full end-to-end. But once they come back year over year, they'll work in groups, our software test group, our development group. They'll support our sales team. Some of the funny ones is that they'll work in the training group where we train our customers. So here I got either a high school kid or a freshman in college training these folks on products that they know. And one of the comforting ones is that we had them in sales as well. And so our sales folks are engineers too. They would get mad if I don't make sure I say that. But we did a debrief at the end of the summer, and the person over our sales office said, we've never had an intern this technical shadow in sales this early in their career. And that's just a testament to the point that they can do, and if you put it in front of them, they will pick it up and they'll grow and they'll do very good things. My last year, the demo I talk about, the exhibit they did for the Children's Museum, very, very, very fluid experience. And so I always put up this slide of a horse at a river on the day before their presentation to my boss. And I would talk about how we could get them to the water, but sometimes we can't make them drink. And this exhibit looked like it was an epic fail, like it was not going to work. And we have 24 hours before we demo it. And the next day, everything worked. And so I was confused at first. But I give a shout out to my John Hay kid, who wrote some programs on his mobile phone that controlled our whole system that I'm not sure he was supposed to be doing. But just to show the capability of a high school kid that can do that and pull it off. And so they're really, really smart. You put it in front of them and they can do. And so they do all kinds of crazy projects like that. And they're thrown right in with engineers. And so as they come through, those are areas they'll work in. Their work schedule, we have a flex schedule at Rockwell, and we allow them to be on a flex schedule as well. There are days in the summer where my first years, they work remotely because we can work remotely, especially around like the 4th of July. And when it gets crunch time to get their projects done, they just have to figure it out. They have badge access 24/7 to the building, and they can come and go as they need. I mean, we treat them just like full-time employees. During the school year, we work around their schedule. So if they have time off from classes, like one young lady, she's at Cleveland State. She's at Rockwell 3 days a week and 2 days at Cleveland State. That's just her schedule. She can work, and she has a Rockwell issue laptop that she takes with her, and we just treat them like full-time employees. So that's how they are. There are clearances, though. For example, when they work in our government business, there are some strict rules that they have to follow. But again, they go through the same process and they're put right in, and so we treat them just like any other employee that works at Rockwell. So,
thank you. And Karen had mentioned the idea of through the ECEC program, transportation's picked up by magnet, and the students are dropped off and picked up from their workplace. But in other environments and other internships, let's start, Craig, with you. How do kids transport themselves?
Sure. Any GCP crowd knows transportation is one of the top critical issues in our workforce and economic development agenda. And it is extra challenging for high school youth who generally don't have cars to get to work. So there's a couple options. One is bus tickets, which sometimes can be provided by the school or the third-party intermediary working. Sometimes the school, if the project is endorsed by the school and tied, especially to career and tech ed project, the school can cover transportation. And then one creative way around this is project-based, what Marcel was talking about, working from home. So as much as possible, if projects can be done remotely, that's another way to get around the transportation issue. But there's no easy answers because some businesses are not on a bus line. It is a challenge, and it's great when you have the ability, you have a cohort, like in your situation you described, where a cab can take them all. So those are some of the answers, but it is definitely part of that larger issue that we're experiencing in the community.
Is there any more to add on transportation?
Well, in our case, we're looking at a combination of bus passes and passenger vans. We did an interesting study at the beginning of our project where we actually hired a CSU intern who did some GIS mapping for us to look at the businesses that we're targeting and the locations they are on the bus line. One of the things that I did want to say, because in our program we do have funding for transportation, we don't want transportation necessarily to be a barrier to our young people being successful. If there is an amazing internship opportunity out there and it's in a company way far away, we're going to look at ways to make sure that the student can get there. Some of the companies that we've talked to, manufacturing doesn't happen 8 to 5 every day. And first shift doesn't start at 8. But we want to offer that opportunity to our young people and our scholars, so we're looking at passenger van opportunities. So I think in some cases we have to be really creative if we want these internship opportunities to be meaningful. It's very pie in the sky. I will say, though, in another organization that I worked with a while ago at Newbridge, we had a really unique project in where we were looking at ways to provide cars for our graduating workforce and looking at ways to do it economically. So those are things sometimes that we play around with because transportation can be a barrier, but we don't want it to be.
For us, it's a nightmare. Rockwell is not on a bus line, and we used to have a bus that dropped off in front of our building, but they took that away. And so the closest bus is Beechwood Mall or Mayfield and Lander, and so you're like a 30-minute walk from there if you're catching a bus. I spent plenty of days driving to Beechwood and picking them up. And that bus, even when it dropped off at Rockwell, it stopped at a certain hour during the middle of the day. And so it is a nightmare from that standpoint. But we are brokering a deal because we do have a ton of interns and co-ops that we work with Case for them to stay for the summer. So we're trying to create a path with a van from there, so we can just tell them get the Case and then they can come up. But to your point, we had a certain incident where a manager would Skype me in the morning and say, "Hey, Joe's here at 7:45 today." And the next day he say he's here at 7:37, and he's at 7:50. And I finally texted him back and said, "You realize he catches the bus, right? He catches 4 buses, and he's leaving his house at 5:30 in the morning to get here, right?" He didn't realize that because so many of us are so used to getting in our car and just driving to work. And my joke to him, again, not HR, was he can't tap the bus driver and say, "Skip the next 2 stops because I'm going to be late to work today." And it doesn't work like that. And so we do have to be mindful and figure out creative ways. So we can give them all the bus tickets in the world, but to get them to our building, it is a mess. And so we have to figure that out. I thought Ursuline would keep that because we're near Ursuline, that they would keep that piece going, but they've canceled it. So.
And from a school district perspective, I'll make a comment about transportation. In our minds, as we work with Magnet to build the ECEC program, my partner who I mentioned before, Julie, said we cannot let transportation stand in the way of this opportunity for students. So as a school district, we have made an investment in that transportation. We will ensure that our kids, thanks to Julie, we will ensure, it's coming out of her pay, no, just kidding. We will ensure that we will transport our kids in an ongoing way because we don't want that to be a stumbling block. We have 4 minutes, so each of us have 1 minute to do this. If you're going to provide advice to the folks in the room, what is the piece of advice as they think about hiring and using high school interns that you would offer to them? And well, we're starting in the middle. We'll start with Serene, and we'll go Serene, Karen, Marzell, and close with Craig.
So a couple of pieces of advice I have for you. I want you to consider high school interns. They're going to bring energy and excitement and a newness to the work that you do. Young people are often very coachable, and they're ready and eager to learn. Companies benefit when you support your local high schools. I mean, it feels good. It's the right thing to do. And you can be building your company's brand awareness much quicker with a new constituent audience. So those are some of the thoughts. And then for our young people, they are receiving that necessary work experience that we say they need. It's a resume builder, and it's a key to ensure that they're making good career decisions, whether the internship works well or not. Things to think about. ID staff who are excited about working with young people. Don't put them with somebody that doesn't want to deal with a high school intern. But then also make sure your entire company knows that you have a high school intern in your building so that they can feel part of the culture, that they can feel accepted. One of the things our program is doing that's very unique is we're providing a training program for companies through the Emerging Talent Network, because we want them to understand what is it like to work with Generation Z, a millennial. Where are some of the backgrounds of our young people coming from who go to Cleveland Metropolitan Schools? You know, what are some tools to empower you for you to be successful? Make sure that you have a clearly defined project or work assignment or something for them to do, and a defined time frame as to when this internship is going to happen. And so those are some pieces of advice. And then Craig would say find an intermediary like YOU or Jumpstart or Magnet or WireNet to serve as a broker between the schools and employees. That might be of assistance to you as well.
Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Having a broker, it would so easy with the ECEC program. Brittany, who's here, has done so much work. I really didn't have to do that much except for vet it through my corporate office. But probably the absolute best people to talk to are any of the interns that are in a program. Because we can sit up here and tell you how great it is. It is great for companies. It's great for my team members because they love to teach and they love to have that young energy, and someone who's a sponge, they love that. And I can tell you that all day, but it's those students who can really tell you the benefit that they get from it. So try it, reach out to one of the organizations that can be that intermediary. It's worth it. It's worth it for us. I mean, I enjoy it as well. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Totally agree with both of those, and just add in the experience and opportunities in all facets, right? So the schools benefit from that, the students, and getting them out earlier and sooner to see either what they want to do or not what they want to do. And then to us, I agree, just the energy in the building is so different when you have people who are not of the same mindset, the same generation around you, and think just different ways. And so those are ones I would add as well.
Thank you. And Craig, if you would.
So this is our future workforce, your future customers. Also an opportunity for professional development for a rising star in your company to be the mentor. I want to emphasize something Serene said, very important, that they have a clear project and scope, know exactly what they're going to do every hour they're there. And then as it relates to third-party intermediaries, you're right, that is exactly what I'm going to say. And a couple other things that we haven't touched on. Liability is a key issue that people wonder about. And third-party intermediaries like YOU can be helpful there. We were founded the reason YOU was founded back in 1982 was to house young people in a work experience. Another way people deal with liability is they go through a temporary agency, a staffing agency. So we didn't want to forget liability because I know that was a big issue. And I'll end by saying, if you want a third-party intermediary and want to get started, we're right here. Sarah Cohn is right here now. I have her card, and she's here in the audience. So if you want to get started with an internship, you can do that today, right before lunch.
and that is about the lunch call. If you would, please give our panel a hand. And I'll take the lead.